one other big question I had for you was, what do you see as the next frontier for deep learning? Maybe beyond NLP and computer vision that already work pretty well?
Yeah. I've seen some really interesting things. One of the things that I go back to, because I kind of joke around that it's investor tourism because it's kind of so far out there. I saw artificial noses. So you can imagine a Glade air freshener where it has perfume and it blows perfume out. Instead, this sucks air over a membrane, and the membrane is kind of both alive cells and also receptors. And they learn patterns, and that simulates smelling. And so with these smelling devices, you can tune them. You can imagine that that's like a model. And so you tune these smelling devices to smelling things, so they want to put them in hospitals to be tuned for certain escaping bacteria. You've heard of dogs that can smell breast cancer. So you can imagine these eventually being in your bathroom, and you can imagine them like in airports. So it's very interesting. I think that it's both far away and not that far away. I mean, we'll definitely see it in our lifetimes.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought at all about this as a domain.
Yeah.
One thing I would love to get your thoughts about is that I've been closer to recently is machine learning on source code.
Yeah.
Because I feel source code is really great for deep learning and representation learning because we have very rich and structured representations like syntax trees, control flow graphs, etc. And software is eating the world, as Mark Anderson would say, and even more so with crypto.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this domain?
Yeah, I've seen a number of projects attempting to learn over source code. Sometimes what they do is you can take a sample problem from homework. Imagine that homework has been assigned for 3 years. You have 300 students. Right now you have a whole bunch of examples of code that solves the same thing. So, those are really short. And then you've seen auto completion for code so that as you type with Google Docs or Gmail, kind of try to complete your sentence, it tries to complete your line of code. I think that as there's a movement to low code, no code, and at the same time learning repeated syntax and an intention, I think that writing code will become more of a thing. Especially you will learn academically, the halting problem, you can't predict when something is going to halt. And then you get into industry and you're like, what? This is pretty much straight line code. I mean, I got like a for loop here, I got some straight line code, and nothing about this is hard. So I think that's kind of the disconnect between academia and real life code. And I think that the real code being much simpler than you thought it was going to be when you were a student really plays into the fact that code will eventually be written also by machines.
That's a fascinating idea. I don't know if you've seen the ML-based pair programming that GitHub released with Codex based on OpenAI's GPT-3. I think this goes in the direction of auto-generating code, but this also raises a ton of issues around privacy because you're actually sharing the data, like the code that you write in your IDE as you write it. Do you feel we can do something about this?
It really depends on who's seeing it. Having a model see it, I think you can have it locally, you can learn it locally. I think there's things you can do. So I hate to say I don't worry about it too much, but I think it's overcomable because maybe the model will, come to you, live on your machine and kind of learn your style. So it'll be like your assistant.
That makes sense. One concern that at least when you go see YouTube videos of people presenting Codex that developers have is sharing their data with a centralized entity at GitHub, but maybe over time replaces part of their workflows and they don't benefit as much from the actual code that they wrote, and GitHub ends up like being the one who benefits. Do you think crypto could play a role into decentralizing some of this? I might be getting us in a rabbit hole here.
I haven't thought about crypto for that. Obviously, crypto is one of those emerging trends that everybody is studying. And I love the arguments that crypto isn't actually coming. Have you seen how much money is in Bitcoin? I mean, it's already happened. So I kind of find it funny when people say, oh, they're not sure it's really going to take off. I think they haven't looked at the data.
Just as a side comment, Teo, I know you have a couple more questions, but I think just to speak to probably Jerry and I's reaction for a lot of this stuff, I feel like in some ways we're sort of divining things that I probably would have had no visibility other than this conversation. And a lot of the pictures that you paint, I feel like it paints a really clear understanding of the use case and the implications from a lot of the different AI ML applications we're talking about, which I think is really cool. So I'm sitting over here with my jaw dropped, is all I'm trying to say. We were talking a little bit about GPT-3. I heard about this potential use case of being able to write down text of like an application or a website that you want to build. And then that text then through an AI algorithm generates the actual website itself. Is that something that both of you have been familiar with, heard about?
I've seen some things that are textual that are still pretty code like. And I've also seen pictures so that you draw boxes and then you put text in the boxes and then even a box inside the box. So it maybe thinks, oh, that's going to be check marked. And so there are these tools that allow you to draw on a piece of paper what you want the website to look like. And then the code gets generated.
Wow. To me, that seems like there's the quote. It's like technology should seem like magic. I think I totally butchered the quote, but to me, that's magic. It's been just like this, wide exploration of a lot of different technologies, which has been so fun. I know one of the unique perspectives that you have is that you're seeing a lot of these early stage companies sort of enter into building out these different products and use cases.